Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, members and distinguished guests. Welcome to an evening with Dr. Brian Bridges. He likes to be called Brian, so I'll respect his wishes. Hosted by the NAACP New Jersey State Conference Education Committee. I'm Sandra Masso, Vice Chairperson of the Education Committee, and it is my distinct pleasure to moderate this evening's event. At this time, I'd like to introduce Bruce Morgan, First Vice President, NAACP New Jersey State Conference, for remarks. Bruce?
Good evening, Dr. Peters. I'm going to defer to your title. I want to welcome you to the New Jersey State Conference NAACP Education Committee meeting. I want to welcome you to our state. I'm very happy to have you here, get to meet you, and hopefully this will be a long, prosperous, productive, introduction and relationship you'll have with the NAACP. I know from your bio, I see you was born in Brooklyn, so I got to give you a little bit of that New York juice. I'm a Harlem boy myself. I went to school in Brooklyn, so we got a little kinship there. And I just want to welcome you. I hope you enjoy yourself here, and I want to say that Tom Puryear has been a very, very good chairman of the NAACP Education Committee. So I hope that you and him will have a very good relationship going forward, because I'm sure he could do a lot for you. I'm sure he can learn a lot from you, and together we'll move our families and our people ahead. I want to welcome you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
We're honored to welcome our distinguished guest, Brian Bridges, Secretary of Higher Education for the state of New Jersey. Brian assumed his position on November 6, 2020, as part of Governor Murphy's administration, where he is responsible for policy development and coordination of higher education activities, including improving college affordability through the Plan for Higher Education and Community College Opportunity Grant. Prior to Brian's current role, he served as a vice president of research and member engagement at the UNCF, United Negro College Fund, and in various leadership positions at Ohio University and George Washington University. Brian earned a doctorate in higher education administration from Indiana University. As he stated, he was born in Brooklyn, New York, and reared in Beaumont, South Carolina. Brian has graciously agreed to present for 25 minutes. Questions will be monitored via chat for our Q&A session at the end of the presentation. At this time, if you can please welcome Brian Bridges.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that warm welcome. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all this afternoon. This feels like a old home week to me. And you already just reminded me of something that I had totally forgotten about, but I try to find these stories that connect me to people in New Jersey all the time. However, my undergraduate experience in South Carolina, I went to a little school in South Carolina called Francis Marion University. And it's in Florence, South Carolina. And Sandra, that's Beaufort, South Carolina. It's Beaufort, North Carolina, Beaufort, South Carolina. But at Francis Marion, I was very active in the NAACP. And actually, our chapter won Chapter of the Year in South Carolina when I was the president of the NAACP chapter on campus. This would have been back in the late 80s. So I've attended one of the national conferences. We even won the Southeast Regional Conference. Our chapter won there was a college bowl around Black History Facts, and we won one year when it was in Charlotte, which would have been like 88 or 89 maybe. Yeah, 88 or 89. So I've got some connections to the NAACP going back 30 years or so now. It amazes me how time flies. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. And I said that I would do my presentation for 25 minutes or so, but might be able to get through it a little more quickly than that to allow more time for us to just dialogue and talk about our statewide higher education priorities and the budget initiatives, given that the budget was just signed by the governor a couple of weeks ago now, aimed at, in the governor's budget is exciting because the higher education investments were aimed at improving educational equity and post-secondary access. And so our agenda for today is pretty straightforward. And I'll begin with a brief introduction about my background. You've heard some of it already, and how it shapes my vision for higher education in the state. I'll then share a brief overview of our priorities that are outlined in our state plan for higher education. And then I'll share a bit about the substantial and monumental higher education investments included in the FY22 budget, which is the budget that governs us from July 1 of this year until June 30th of next year, as well as the ways in which we're leveraging federal COVID relief dollars to continuously support our institutions and students. And I'll wrap up and open the floor for dialogue and questions, because as I can tell already, I think that'll be the most interesting part of our evening. Next slide, Nicole, please. So before I get started, I want to share a little bit about how I envision my background and professional experience shaping the future of higher education in New Jersey. I've held a wide range of positions over the course of a 25+ year career in higher education. I've worked at 5 different campuses where I've been a faculty member, an academic and student affairs administrator, a researcher, and mentor and advocate for student success. I've worked at both public and private universities, selective and less selective, and I've held leaderships. I've complemented those roles by holding leadership positions at national nonprofit associations that advocate for a stronger, more equitable higher education enterprise, particularly the main one being UNCF. Yes, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And in New Jersey, my priority is to build on this experience by taking an equity-first approach to decision-making, ensuring that post-secondary opportunities and access to college are afforded to all residents, and advance the goals of our state plan of higher education, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. Next slide, please. Now, there's a statement in our state plan, and Nicole can post the link to the state plan in the chat at some point while I'm talking here, but there's a statement in the plan that I just love and reiterate over and over again, because our vision in the plan is for every New Jerseyan, regardless of life circumstances, to have the opportunity to obtain a high quality credential that prepares them for life after college. Every New Jerseyan. However, we know that racial and geographic disparities exist in post-secondary attainment and or the rate at which New Jersey students are completing and earning college degrees. New Jersey's attainment rate, and we define attainment can be defined a number of different ways, but we define attainment primarily as post-secondary attainment. So associate's degrees, 4-year degrees, graduate degrees, certificates, and credentials as well. New Jersey's attainment rate is currently 57%. And that's actually higher than the national average of 51%, which is a good thing. However, when you break this down by race, ethnicity, and geography, there are some equity gaps that are troubling and persistent. For instance, the attainment rate for African Americans is 34%. For American Indian students, it's 31%, and for Hispanic students, it's 27%. And then when you look at attainment by geography, when you break it down by counties of the state, the top 5 counties with the lowest attainment rates start at Cumberland with just 22%. Now, think about it. Over half of the state has some kind of post-secondary credential, either a certificate, credential, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, or graduate degree. In Cumberland County, down at the bottom of the state, as far south as you can go, pretty much, only 22%, 1 out of every 5 or so people have attained the same as what you see across the state. And when you compare that to other counties like Morris and the like, where the attainment rate is over 60%, we've got some work to do geographically. There are other counties like Salem and Passaic in the southern part of the state where there is more work to do. And we know that the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the inequities that already existed among our minority and underserved communities here across the state. And that's why it's more important than ever for the state to strive toward our attainment goal of 65% of working age adults obtaining a high quality credential by 2025. Now, I know that's right around the corner, that's 4 years from now, but we're working diligently to get that attainment rate up from 57% up to 65%. And we're doing some things to drill down on that, particularly given the gaps that we've explained here. And that includes, one of the things that we're doing is some targeted efforts to ensure that we get an additional 250,000 Black, Latinx, and Native American individuals attaining a post-secondary credential, as well as raising attainment in all counties to at least 45%. So we're targeting some of our efforts to try to make sure that we close some of these attainment gaps so that everyone has a chance to participate fully in the economy and be able to pursue meaningful jobs that have substantial returns on investment in the state, because we know those jobs exist. Next slide, please. So our state plan for higher education, and as I've mentioned already, that there are some pretty pervasive gaps in attainment by race, ethnicity, and geography across New Jersey, which prevents us from having a fully diverse, fully educated workforce to contribute to the growing innovation economy. And one of the things I think about is that, I remember hearing at a conference years ago where the CEO he was the chairman of the board of Intel. Now this would have been about 15, 16 years ago. And he said at Intel, and Intel, they're the company that makes, you look on your little computer or laptop and you see the little Intel icon down there. They make most of the computer chips. They make a lot of computer chips in computers. And he said something that basically was a presentation of a conference of college presidents. And he said, we can not only survive, we could thrive at Intel if we never hire another American. And it made people step back and, kind of gasp. And he said, we're committed to American workers, but he wanted to demonstrate to those presidents they need to pick up the pace in how they prepare students for the future economy and for the future workforce, because other countries, namely India and China, were accelerating the pace of training for the innovation economy. And so we have to do the same thing here in New Jersey. And we believe that closing these equity gaps helps us to do that. And that's a central theme of our state plan, which focuses on these 5 key priority areas. First, creating equitable opportunities for students to gain early exposure to college. 2, making college more affordable. And most of our work on the state plan has been around the affordability agenda. 3, fostering and celebrating student success, which is an overarching kind of agenda. 4, promoting safe and inclusive learning environments, particularly given what's going on in our largest society. And as we provide more access to students through our college affordability efforts, through the Community College Opportunity Grant, through the Garden State Guarantee, now more students have access to go to college. We've got to make sure that those campuses are safe and inclusive for all students who take advantage of those affordability opportunities. And then cultivating research, innovation, and talent. Now, a lot of work lies ahead to not only assure that we achieve these goals in each of these areas, in spite of the pandemic, but we want to make sure that priority populations do not get left behind in the work that we have to do before us. Next slide, please. So that's a little bit of context about what we do at OCHE, the Office of the Secretary of Higher Education. So I want to talk a little bit about the FY22 budget. A year ago, the state's economy had been destabilized by the pandemic, and many New Jersey families had their financial security fully upended. I can remember I was working at UNCF at the time, and last April, there were places we were wondering how many colleges and universities might shut down. UNCF even had to think about, if this goes on for another year, can we survive? So we were devastated a year ago by the pandemic. So Governor Murphy and the legislature partnered to provide relief and spur equitable and inclusive economic growth through the FY22 budget. And this budget includes a comprehensive college affordability package that helps those saving for college, current students, and those repaying loans, and increases access to higher education through the Garden State Guarantee, the Community College Opportunity Grant, and TAG, the Tuition Assistance Grant, which I'll speak to in more detail later. Now, this is a budget that invests in our middle class and working class families and puts a world-class education within reach for everyone, ensuring that the economy is stronger and fairer for all New Jerseyans. And through the higher education investments in this budget, we're expanding opportunities to families who would not have the chance to attend college otherwise, many of whom are students of color, low-income families, and those from disadvantaged backgrounds who have traditionally not been afforded equal access to higher education. So one of my mentors told me, don't talk for more than 3 minutes without listening to people. So I've been talking way more than 3 minutes, and I'm halfway through the presentation. Let me pause and see if there are any questions about anything I've said thus far before I jump into the specifics of the budget.
Dr. Bridges, let me get started.
Yes, sir.
How might the NAACP partner with your office to increase the recruitment, the enrollment, and retention and graduation rates of students of African and Latinx ancestry?
And that's a great question, Tom. One of the things that we would love to partner with you, because we need as many hands, all hands on deck across the state. We have to raise awareness for students because we've got these affordability options. You know, technically, it is, a student could go to college if their families earn less than $65,000 a year. And let's be honest, that that group of people in New Jersey are disproportionately Black and brown. And so those families can essentially send their kids to college tuition free. They could choose to go to a community college for 2 years, get their tuition paid for, and then transfer to a 4-year institution, including Rutgers, one of the public universities, and have their tuition covered for those students. So we have to raise awareness about these opportunities. We have to encourage our students to try to cultivate what I call a college-going culture and help all students understand that college is possible for them in New Jersey. And so we would love to partner with you to help raise awareness in all communities to make sure that all students who have the opportunity to take advantage of these programs can do so and benefit from them fully. So we would love to partner with you, kind of tap your brains for good ideas about how we help to raise awareness and participation in these programs, and would look forward to being an able partner as we move forward in trying to make sure that every New Jerseyan has these opportunities.
By the way, before I go on with my next question, of the participants, if you have a question that you would like to be presented to Dr. Bridges, simply put it in the chat and I'll try to get to it. Second question, I believe you were about to mention the Garden State Guarantee. Could you elaborate about what that program is? And my secondary question to that is, will there be an impact in regards to EOF? Will an EOF student be eligible to receive a Garden State Guarantee?
So with that, I'm going to ask Nicole to advance the slide to the next slide here so I can talk a little bit about the Garden State Guarantee. But I'll answer your second question first. No, EOF, this is designed to, the Garden State Guarantee is designed to be what we call in the higher education scholarship arena, a scaffold. So students, this is a last dollar scholarship. And essentially, students have to exhaust all their federal aid first. So they get Pell, any federal aid that they can get. Then they exhaust their state aid, which includes TAG or any other scholarship that they might receive from the state. Then they exhaust their institutional aid, which if they're going to Montclair and they get and Montclair gives them a $2,000 incentive award, they get that applied. Then EOF is applied. And then whatever is left, what is called unmet need, the unmet need is what the Garden State Guarantee would cover. So students have an opportunity, and this is a transformational investment. This is the largest investment of new money in higher education in 20 years. $50 million is designed to increase funding for 4-year public institutions to administer this program, and with a special focus on outcomes for students of color and low-income students. And so in exchange, as we see here, students who participate, or the institutions that participate in this program, will commit to a tuition and fee-free price guarantee, which basically means that for their students who earn less than $65,000, they get to participate in this program. Then there's a sliding scale for students above the income threshold. So it's not just for the students who are 65 or below, 65K or below, but we're allowing institutions, we're providing them with the funding so that they can provide a sliding scale. So they can still get discounts, give discounts to students who are, say, between 65K to 90K. And so we know that institutions will manage that differently, but I've seen some of the models. Some institutions might offer a 50% discount on tuition if their families earn $75,000, for instance. So that's a huge benefit to the students whose families fall just a little bit outside of that $65,000 area. And then a predictable pricing structure, which we have to work out, but basically we want students to know at the beginning of their college career how much college might cost them. And so we're proposing what is called a tuition ceiling, so that students would know upfront that their tuition would not increase more than, say, 10 or 15% over their 4 years. And then they would see how much that increase would be over the 4 years that they would be enrolled. So the Garden State Guarantee is a robust program and is one of our many strategies aimed at increasing enrollment and keeping New Jersey students in New Jersey to attend college. And we also see this as a strategy to rebound from COVID-19 as we look to our students to help grow the workforce. And we project that approximately 10,000 eligible Black students who are attending our senior public institutions, the four-year institutions, would benefit from the Garden State Guarantee based on fall 2020 enrollment and income eligibility. Now, this spring, for instance, and Tom, you mentioned watching me do this at one of these at Montclair. I participated in several student roundtable discussions about the program, during which students shared how impactful the initiative would be, particularly for those facing adversity and financial hardships. It is a substantial, it is amazing how much students overcome to try to get their college degrees. You know, at each of these places that we did these roundtables, there were students who, at least one or two students talking about having 2 or 3 jobs in order to basically stay in college and be able to pay their tuition. The Garden State Guarantee helps to alleviate that for those students, particularly the poorer students, because those students could get their tuition free. And so we want to reiterate that the cost of college should not be a barrier that prevent talented students from turning their college dreams into realities. And we don't want anyone shut out of higher education because of their zip code, their background, or economic status. And the GSG is a way to make sure that we're help to send the message that we're investing in students we're investing in New Jersey through investing in our students. Hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Dr. Bridges. I see Bruce Morgan has put a question in the chat box, and I'll try to bring that forward. Bruce is asking, for those students who are not interested in obtaining a college degree, those students who might be seeking professional development in the mechanical arts, plumbing, carpentry, what have you, what is New Jersey looking to do to help those students?
Well, we value all credentials. So if those students are looking for support for technical skills and training, we're actually working on an initiative now called the Pay It Forward program that will help address that for students who are interested in these kinds of technical training opportunities. So there will be more to come about that. That will be a program that will be administered through our Higher Education Student Assistance Authority. But I think that there will be some significant investments there to help students in those areas. We're also doing things like investing in offshore wind, for instance. The governor has invested significant resources in building up the wind industry, the offshore wind industry in New Jersey, so that we become a first in class on the East Coast as far as offshore wind. We just actually finished a competition where we awarded a $3 million grant to Atlantic Cape College, and for them to provide wind safety technician training. And so that's another area that we're able to invest in to help students who are interested in those kinds of technical fields get the support that they need. So there are definitely, as I mentioned, we value all credentials, and there will definitely be emerging opportunities to help students secure some resources who want to pursue those areas as well.
I
see another question.
Right, if I can go back to the guarantee loan. Deborah Jennings wants to know, is there a limit to the time that a student can take to achieve their degree? Is there any minimum number of credits earned per year, per semester, if you participate with the GSG?
That's a great question. So we still have to work out the details with the presidents of our institutions. However, we do know that a few things will be the case. Students will need to be full-time, and the Garden State Guarantee will be 2 years of funding for years 3 and 4. So for full-time students who are in years 3 or 4, now we have to work out the details around what constitutes years 3 and 4, but students in their 3rd and 4th years who are full-time will be able to take advantage of the Garden State Guarantee. So great question. And full-time credit is 12 hours. It requires 15 hours a semester to graduate in 4 years, but full-time is 12 credit hours.
Secretary, I can give you more questions, or you can go back to your presentation.
Let me get through, I've only got a couple more slides. Let me get through the rest of the presentation, and then we can jump back into the questions. So I want to give some updates on a couple of student support programs, financial aid student support programs. And many of you are familiar with TAG. Funding increased in the TAG program by $35 million, which is another historic increase, to $473 million, which increases the per student TAG award amount for more than 70,000 students receiving need-based financial aid. And nearly 13,000 of our TAG recipients are African-American students. And so this is a program that will definitely benefit thousands of students across the state. A report was released recently by the Urban Institute that shows that New Jersey gives more individual aid to students than any other state in the country.
Wow.
However, we're a high tuition state, and so students are still paying the 4th highest net price. And that's part of the reason why our affordability agenda is so important, and we're drilling down on it through programs like TAG and these investments. The budget also includes an increase of nearly $4.8 million for EOF, the beloved EOF program, for a total of $53.8 million that is invested in EOF each year now, marking the largest additional investment and 4th consecutive year, each year of Governor Murphy's administration, that he's advocated for an increase in this premier program. And about 3,100 students, about a quarter of all EOF students are Black students. And this increase will allow us to support an additional 2,000 students, in addition to the more than 13,000 students served annually. And then the Community College Opportunity Grant is the front end, essentially, of the Garden State Guarantee, what we call our New Jersey Promise Program. And Promise programs are gaining steam across the country, where states are trying to provide students with free college, tuition-free college. And so our Promise program in New Jersey starts with the Community College Opportunity Grant, which was signed into law in February to preserve this opportunity for future generations. And that program was increased by $7 million over last year for a total of $27 million. And it has now assisted more than 18,000 students, and it has the same guardrails that the GSG does, where students have to earn less than $65,000 household income. And this program has now assisted over 18,000 students, including recent high school graduates and working age adults. We know that as we recover from the pandemic, there'll be lots of adults who are looking to reskill and upskill. And so if they qualify, they can take advantage of the CCOG. About 1,700 students, African-American students, benefit from this program. And last year, CCOG assisted more than 10,000 students on their path to obtaining a degree, 55%, over half of whom were returning adult learners. And this year, since we've been marketing the program more aggressively, we saw a 34% increase in uptake this year. And so many students are the recipients of a combination of these financial aid programs, and about 15,000 Black students across the state benefit from any of these three programs. So while we've done some great work to help make college more affordable, we're not resting on our laurels and want to continue to try to find investments to help build out these programs further and benefit more students. Next slide. So this is a bit of news I want to share with you all in this budget that helps to address post-secondary affordability. And the College Affordability Act is designed to help those who are saving for college, current students, and those repaying loans via deductions for taxpayers with incomes up to $200,000. Now, there are a couple of pieces here. So one of the things that the program does is provide $10 million in state grants for taxpayers with incomes up to $75K. So $75K and below can get a one-to-one match of up to $750 if they start an NJBEST account, which is a college savings account. And we know that the research shows that students, especially from lower income families, are 7 times more likely to attend college if they know that there's a college savings program in their name. So the state, if your family earns less than $75K and you want to start an NJBEST account with $100, the state will match it to $100. If you want to add additional contributions to that in the first year, up to $750, the state will match that. So you can double your money and let it grow and launch your students' college savings account with a significant investment from the state. Part of this is also one of the other things that this helps to do is to provide $5 million for zero interest paid forward interest loans for job training in partnership with the CEO Council. That's what I talked about just a little bit ago. So this is a program that is just getting its start, and there will be more to come about that. But also for the families who earn up to under $200,000, if you make up to $10,000 in tuition payments to a New Jersey institution of higher education, if you contribute up to $10,000 into a NJBEST 529 account, or if you make up to $2,500 in payments on an NJ class loan, you can now make some significant deductions in your New Jersey taxes. So this is a huge win for residents across the state. As I said, these deductions are for taxpayers with incomes up to $200,000, which probably covers well over 90% of the residents in the state. So with that, next slide, please. So this is the last slide, and to give you a sense of something I announced earlier today with the governor at his press conference, we announced the awardees earlier today of nearly $30 million in federal funding that will be distributed to institutions to support core priorities of our state plan and address the impacts of COVID-19 on post-secondary students. $28.5 million in funding from the Department of Education through the second round of the governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund will be awarded to 35 public and private institutions that receive state operating aid. These institutions will implement best practices that increase college completion, address barriers to student success, and develop sustainable systemic reforms. Many of these populations were among, as we know, the hardest hit by the pandemic, and we know that this resulted in declines in enrollment, challenges to student success, and unprecedented unemployment figures. And these grants to these institutions are designed to help counter these challenges. We appreciate that institutions are committing to this challenge and look forward to learning from the innovative best practices that they implement. Also, $1 million will be awarded to 11 public institutions to combat food insecurity among students, which we know is a pervasive issue that was only deepened by the pandemic. And this is an issue that has gotten more attention in recent years, but it's often one that goes underreported, and students are proud and often don't want to let people know that they're food insecure, that they don't know where their next meal is coming from. This grant funding will be used to address hunger, student hunger at these campuses, leverage more sustainable solutions to address basic food needs on campus, raise awareness of currently offered campus services, and will continue to build strategic partnerships at the local, state, and national levels to address food insecurity among students. So that was a lot. That concludes my presentation. So we can open things up to the audience. I see we've got a few people.
Dr. Bridges, we know that our public colleges do not report to your office. So the question, however, we're concerned about the lack of faculty members, African Americans and Latinx who are either being hired and or gaining tenure. So my question is, do you have any recommendations to the local colleges on how they can increase the number of their faculty members who are African American or Latinx?
Yes, great question. Faculty diversity is a larger issue across the country. Only about 5% of faculty across the country are African American, and it's close to 6%. And if you remove the HBCUs, the number is actually just barely 5%. And so, so this is something that we want to work on. Our state plan for higher education is equity focused and is designed to address those issues. Our research, innovation, and talent working group that I mentioned was part of the state plan, came up with recommendations for how campuses can help diversify their student bodies or their faculties. So we plan on, the pandemic stalled things a little bit. We plan on working closely with our campuses now that we're moving back to some semblance of normal to look at implementation of some of those recommendations and help them try to identify ways to diversify their campus faculties. The challenge is that you don't make a faculty overnight. I'm a former faculty member myself, and generally those folks have to get PhDs. And even though the PhD, the African American pipeline of PhDs and Latinx pipeline of PhDs is growing, if I remember the numbers right, they're less than 3,000 Blacks who earn PhDs every year, compared to the white population, which, if I remember right, is around 40,000. So there are 33,000 or so Black PhDs being produced every year, or a little less than that, I think. And there are 4,000 campuses in the country. So just think about that. They're all trying to diversify their faculties. So that works out to less than one new Black faculty per campus each year. And then when you throw in the HBCUs, they're trying to recruit their share as well when people are retiring. And especially now that we have a group of faculty who are retiring over the last probably 5 to 10 years, and that will continue on for another 5 to 10 years as the baby boomers continue to retire from the academy. It's difficult. So the diversification of faculty is a multi-year project that will require some innovative out-of-the-box thinking, and would love to hear from anyone in the NAACP about ideas they might have to help us do that.
Careful what you ask for. My next question is, how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted higher education in New Jersey? Or has it?
Well, we know that the pandemic has impacted everyone, every state, every institution, every individual. And so what we've seen, some of the impacts include lower enrollment, definitely at the community colleges. The community colleges saw the biggest drop in enrollment. We also saw, increasing unemployment across the board. And so we know that many of the students who might have been working in the past, because think about it, the people who were the frontline workers are the ones who were hurt the most, and those are lots of college students. And so we know that many of those students lost the jobs that they might have had that could allow them to earn the money they needed to stay in college. So we know that it's impacted institutions and students. However, we're grateful for the over $2 billion in federal funds that came into New Jersey for higher education COVID relief. A good bit of that went directly to the campuses. Some of that, and half of what went to the campuses had to go to student support, student relief, financial emergency relief. And, but we know that it is definitely impacted. I think one of the positive things that we will look back on later is that institutions used to dip their toes in online learning and prior to the pandemic. And I think that they've learned some new skills, built some new muscle in how to administer coursework and academic programs online. Does that mean that we want to do all of what we were doing the last year? No, but I think that some institutions will continue to do more online learning than they did prior to the pandemic. So I think that's a good outcome. You have to identify what some of the good outcomes are in any challenge that you face. And so I think that it's definitely affected our institutions and our students. And that's why we're doing things like the Garden State Guarantee and CCOG to try to help get students to come back to campus.
Thank you, Dr. Bridges. Does New Jersey have an active database where undergraduate enrollment, retention, and graduation rates by institution can be reviewed?
We do. We have some of that data on our website, on the OSHE website. If you go to nj.gov, you can find our OSHE website, and if Nicole can paste that in the chat, you'd be able to go directly to it. But at the bottom of our page, there's Nicole just pasted the homepage for our interactive dashboards. So yes, some of that data is available at the link that is posted in the chat.
Okay. There's a question. I'm a former EOF counselor at one of our local colleges. So my question is, there's a policy in regards to EOF that says that the freshman class of EOF students should be 10% of the previous year's first-time, full-time admittance. It's been my experience, at least in the past, I've been retired now 11 years, that too many of our colleges did not adhere to it, primarily because of the lack of the resources to do that. Are you aware of the policy? I heard you mention that there were additional monies being granted to EOF. Do you see this as a solution?
Yes, I'm aware of the policy. And we know that institutions are encouraged to establish that goal, but they're also encouraged to enroll and support as many EOF students as possible, which is one of the reasons why we're fighting for more money to invest in EOF. And we're pleased that the governor and the legislature has bumped up the EOF investment by almost $5 million this year. So while there's that policy in place, we don't want to turn away students. And unfortunately, we've had to do that in the past because of limited resources. And our goal is to make sure that, as I mentioned before, every New Jerseyan, we want to make sure that every student who needs EOF support can get it, as much as we have support available for them. So our goal is to continue to try to drive more investment in EOF so that we can have more students participate in the program.
I'm also looking at the clock, Dr. Bridges, so, and I don't see any more questions in the chat, but let me ask this question.
Sure.
Again, your office does not, this is not directly tied to your office. Does New Jersey support the cancellation of college loans?
Does New Jersey support the cancellation of college loans? Well, that's a federal policy program. And so at this point, we've not been asked about whether or not we support it or not. And so I don't want to necessarily go on record to commit to that. But if this is a proposal that comes from the Department of Education or the White House, we'll investigate it for its merits and make a decision to support or not support it. But
sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
So let me ask this question. How do you see, or what is the role of higher education in meeting the future needs within our society?
That's another great question. Well, I think higher education is what I call I don't know if there are any military folks on the line, but I consider higher education the force multiplier for our economy. Higher education is the engine that helps to make our economy go. And one of the things I think about as I build out my vision and agenda, I tell people that helping prepare students and adults for the workforce, the emerging workforce, is a key role of higher education. And so I often say, when I've been driving up the Garden State Parkway or the Turnpike, I see all these buildings on the side of the road that I wonder what goes on in those buildings. And I'm sure that there are students who wonder the same thing and don't realize that there are lots of innovative, cutting edge technologies and innovations taking place in New Jersey. However, they need to understand that what those opportunities are, and then be shown the clear higher education pathways to get to them. And so we want to keep more students in New Jersey. We want to keep more graduates in New Jersey. We also want to have them better prepared for the future innovation economy. Higher education is squarely at the nexus between K-12 and the workforce in order to help get our students exposed and prepared for the future as productive citizens who are active in our economy and contributing to our tax base, contributing to their families and their communities. And so higher education plays the most critical role in preparing our workforce. Without higher education, we have no workforce. And so I think that part of what I would like to do is to partner with K-12, higher education, and the workforce community to partner to build this kind of education workforce ecosystem where students are exposed to opportunities, shown those educational pathways, and then are sent on those pathways into a meaningful career upon graduation. And I think that if we're able to do that, we will be able to change New Jersey's economy and its communities in the decades to come.
Dr. Bridges, I want to thank you for the time that you've afforded us this evening. We would like to take you up on your offer as far as interacting with your office to address some of the concerns that we have as far as higher education in our state. So please be looking out for communications from us. And if there's anything that you need from us, do not hesitate to reach out to us.
Great, great.
And I thank all those who sent in questions and also who participated this evening. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you all for having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
evening.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Take care, everybody.